to another Warren and Will's Wild Wine Reviews. I am Warren. My credentials are essentially that I've had over 2,000 wines in about the last 7 years.
I'm Will. My credentials are that I'm a certified sommelier. I've worked in the wine industry on and off for probably a total of close to a decade. I'm not currently working in the industry.
Oh, that means.
Well, yeah. But at wineries, wine stores, I nearly but did not quite finish my master's in winemaking. And as we've noted in other instances, I'm certifiable.
Yeah. All right, so we've got a couple of, we've been busy since our last ones. We now have a Cash App, Venmo,
Yep.
PayPal, and Buy Me a Cup of Coffee, I think it's
Yeah,
called.
Buy Me a
So if
Coffee,
there's
yeah.
any of those that you want to, just toss a little bit our way to say thanks, that's cool. Also, we have been approved by Vivino, so we were found worthy because they said we'll see if you're worthy. We'll decide if you're worthy. They decided we were worthy. So now, if you go to our website when you see us review one of these wines and you click on that Vivino link,
Yeah.
it'll take you there. You can then buy the wines because almost all the wines we do will be for sale at Vivino, and then we'll get a percentage, and that'll help us keep doing this and give us the money to buy some more really good wines that we can share with you.
And the cycle will continue.
All right, so that's just kind of the bookkeeping stuff to let people know where we are and what's going on. So I am going to flip this puppy and start our half-hour review here. Now, what we got here is Anton Bauer Blaufrankish. Blaufrankish, 2017.
Mm-hmm.
The Vivino gives it 4.1 stars out of 5 with 26 ratings, so not a lot of ratings.
Yeah, it's not super popular in America.
Average price listed.
Yeah.
But you could buy it straight from Vivino for $32.
Anton Bauer's a pretty
So you should go to our website, click on the Vivino link,
and
absolutely buy this wine.
If by the end of the review it sounds like the kind of wine you would like.
It's from Wegram, Austria.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an Austrian wine.
Yep.
In 1992, Anton Bauer took over his parents' winery. It does not say how many generations in he might be, but he's certainly a second generation. They traditionally manually harvest everything, so they pick it by hand.
Oh yeah.
So they leave the non-ripe ones behind. They don't get any leaves, that sort of stuff. So they say they believe they have a better product because they still do it by hand.
I could see that.
They have 71 acres. I can't imagine picking that many berries by hand. And I will say that as somebody who trimmed his entire driveway today and stopped when he realized that I had a huge, and they're probably Concord grapes, but I had a huge stand of them in and amongst some trees.
Yeah.
And I picked about 5 gallons of those.
Oh, yeah.
And then went back to trimming.
Easy.
All right. And I've seen, based on what I was reading today, I've seen this referred to as the Pinot Noir of the East. I've had a bottle of this before. I found it funky, so I can certainly see that. Now, here's something you'll find interesting. DNA profiling has shown that the Blaufrankish is a cross between, I'm going to let you pronounce those.
Let's see,
right
Gouais Blanc, which isn't surprising because Gouais Blanc is the parent of a lot of grapes, and Blau Zimmertraube. Okay, and Blaufrankish is a parent grape of Gamay and Zweigelt. Now, Zweigelt, that doesn't surprise me because that's another Austrian grape, but Gamay is a French grape that's grown in Beaujolais. So that is actually really surprising that it's a parent of that. I wouldn't have guessed that. It tells you that it's older because they've been growing Gamay and Beaujolais for hundreds of years.
Well, this is like the westernmost part of the world that this gets to, which is why they call, because
they grow it throughout Eastern Europe.
Yeah.
It's funny that they were compared it to Pinot Noir. I mean, I guess thinking about European and Pinot Noirs, that's actually probably a pretty fair comparison. If you're thinking about like Oregon Pinot Noir, this is not going to be the same type of thing, in my opinion.
There's a little bit of funk on there.
Oh, a lot of funk.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing about Blaufrankish that I warn people, if you like funky grape varietals, it's going to be up your alley. We were talking about that Monastrell Morvedra thing last time, or Petit Syrah, and how it can get funky.
Nice heavy bottle too.
Yeah, a lot of cracked black pepper on the nose with that one.
Yeah, you can get it for $32 a bottle, and I paid a lot more than that at Vivino, right?
Yeah, Blaufrankish. And just to let people know, you'll rarely run across this, but there actually is one version of it here in Virginia that's grown under this name, Lemberger. Not like the cheese, but Lemberger. BERGER,
Well,
is a synonym for this, and they're actually growing some at oxide vineyards in Stanton.
They grew it in Virginia,
They do.
Pennsylvania, and a couple of other states.
Mm-hmm.
It's
It
never
does
gonna-
does better in cooler climates.
See, this doesn't strike me as very different from Pinot Noir. I mean, it's got a little more pepper.
This is
But,
more like a Pinot Noir than I thought it would be, which is why it's always good to refresh your memory
He's
with
trying
stuff.
to blow off the funk.
Mm-hmm. No, or
Which
just
I'm
or
trying to
just
do
or
too.
just get a little more activated even. Yeah,
Very
what I'm getting
juicy mouthfeel, very juicy.
what I'm getting off of this just immediately is a lot of herb, a lot of pepper, mild amount of funk. Not a ton of fruit on the nose, I would say.
Not a ton of fruit in the taste either. It's 14% by alcohol.
Ooh, yeah. Whatever fruit there is dried, but again, that sort of piquant black pepper up front.
Yep.
Maybe like a little bit of raspberry, a little bit of strawberry, a lot of just
If you
wild.
take your time and really search for it.
The first thing that hits you though is like if you've ever had like sharp, pungent green herbs. It's not vegetal, not in that way, but it's just.
It's
got
not
that
really
very-
sharp or pungent. I
Mm-mm.
mean, you're using those words, but and I know where you're going with
Right.
it, but a lot of people won't. It's really light. I mean, really light. This you could do this after mowing the lawn. You could drink this one. Although 14% isn't really light. It just feels really light. As
This
you
is
drink
this is one of those things where my memory plays tricks on me because I could have sworn the Blaufrankisches that I'd had in the past were more gutsy than this. But
if
also,
you had American ones, they might have been.
well, but also you got to remember is that by and large, Austrian wines aren't all that gutsy, and Zweigelt is much lighter than this. So when I was having Blaufränkisch, it was usually with other Austrian wines,
Yeah.
and coming at the end, it's like, oh, this is the heaviest thing we've had, and so it seems heavier by comparison. So
Yep.
also, I was doing a lot of my Blaufränkisch drinking in 2008, which I had a good palate then, but I had almost no experience. And really heavy-bodied stuff blew me away. So this is probably the heaviest thing that
There's
I
not
can
a
handle.
whole lot going on in the mid-range at all. It goes straight from the
This might need to open up
right
some.
to the finish.
I mean, it's only
Yeah.
5 years old, but I would not be surprised with the level of funk that this is showing. When you ever have a wine that's this funky right off the bat, decanting, aeration, or just letting it
And
breathe
I
in the
thought
glass.
about both, but I'm like, well, if it's like a Pinot, I don't really want to do all that to it.
I don't know.
And
Some
that-
Pinots need to be decanted.
Well,
I don't
know,
want to say need to, but can benefit from it.
Not most most Pinots don't need to be drank.
Well, yeah, you don't
But
like
that's
Pinot.
me. Right.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, depending, I mean, some Pinots
I
can
like this a
actually-
bit more than I like the Pinots because it's got the pepper,
Mhm.
and it's not quite as light as a Pinot.
No, it's not.
It's not quite that light.
If it were,
But it's not. I wouldn't call this medium under any.
Mm-mm.
You know, if you held a gun to my head and said it's medium, I'd be like, dude, it's heavy. But otherwise, I'm going to tell you, it's pretty light.
Yeah. No, I mean, I would say it's edging towards medium bodied. If you like Pinot Noirs and you're looking for something, because the thing is that this can be a problem for some people. If you're getting into red wines, you can feel a bit thrown in the deep end with some Cabernet Sauvignons or some Zins. And on the other,
with many wines.
yeah,
Not
and
just
so
those two
it can
grades.
be you can struggle to find that unicorn. What's a lighter bodied, not necessarily light, but lighter bodied red wine that's still flavorful and interesting and has stuff going on. It has the complexity that you're looking for. And I would say that this is tending towards that. It's not as complex as Warren and I maybe would like at the moment.
It is the Reserva. So
It is the Reserva. And it's also worth noting, we just opened this.
Mhm.
Our opinion of this may be different by the time that we're done
I
with
maybe
this
should
review.
have. Probably should have decanted it, but I don't usually decant wines that I know are light.
I
just
think it's good to demonstrate. You know, we decant wines, and we often tell people what it's doing. I think it's good for people to be able to see the difference between a wine that's decanted and we're raving about it versus our opinion of it changing gradually
Yeah.
over the course of 30 minutes.
Yeah,
So
and this one will change. I mean,
Absolutely.
it's already a little more. I don't want to say accessible or approachable because it was already
Yeah.
accessible.
It's pretty
is
easy
an
to drink right off the
drink
bat.
wine.
Mhm.
You know, as long as you can deal with a little bit of funk, and if you can't, just do this
Yeah.
and it blows off. I mean, this funk
also another
is still on the nose, but it's not in the tongue.
one thing to
anymore.
keep in mind, and we've brought this up before, is that a lot of the California American wines in general, but California, Washington, cabs, and things that we're drinking, Americans really designed their wine to be drunk on its own.
Yep.
They can pair with food, but they're not being designed by people who are thinking about food first and foremost. They're thinking about people who like to drink Napa cabs and Washington cabs and the fact that they're going to be drinking them straight out of the bottle. So that's
And
one of the
Yeah.
that's one of the things that's guiding their aesthetic principles. In Europe, there's no way that anybody well, not no way, but it's rare to have wine without food.
Yep.
If you're opening a bottle of wine, somebody's making some food. If somebody's making some food, somebody's opening some
And
wine.
certainly there's going to be crackers and cheese, if nothing else.
Crackers and
If
cheese, some
nothing
sausage.
else.
I mean, like what I'm thinking of this with is
And
fennel
biscuits.
sausage. Yeah, fennel sausage with that herbal character and that cracked black pepper. This would be amazing. If you ever had Italian fennel sausage, this would be fantastic
Yeah,
with it.
yeah, I'd agree with that. Anything that gives it a little extra spice. Really, for me, you know, pepperoni goes well with every weak wine
I
that was
was
ever
just
made.
about to say pepper
Because
jack
it
cheese.
brings. I remember I was drinking. I was at a blind tasting, but we were doing. They call them friendly wines
Yeah.
beforehand. We all have a couple, and I was having this. I had this New Zealand white. And I was just raving about all the spices and everything going on, and I noticed my friends are looking at me funny, and I'm like, "Wait a minute, was that just the pepperoni?" I had with it? And they're like, "Yep, that was just the pepperoni." I said,
But you
"Well, you
have-
know
you
what?
have- you have-
With the pepperoni, this is a dynamite white wine.
Yeah, you're
Without
having
it,
fun with it.
yeah, without it, it was to me, it was worthless. But with it, it was a really. I mean, I don't normally like Chenin Blanc at all, but
Here's the thing: is that those New Zealand white wines are defined by their screamingly high acidity,
Yeah.
which makes them very, very food friendly. If you're having, because you know, sausage has a fair amount of salt in it. What it's doing is it's cutting through that salt, and it's just providing a nice counterpoint.
we have a bottle of Signpost New Zealand white from Orange Swift that we will get to, and I got it for one reason: it has the biggest nose I've ever experienced in my life.
Really, from a white wine.
Really, from any wine. I mean, it's huge.
Well, in some ways, that doesn't surprise me. Those New Zealand Sauvignon Blancs, they can. I mean, there's some unfortunate associations they have. The polite association is called gooseberry. Some people do compare it to what happens when a cat gets in somewhere and has an accident.
Well, I mean, coffee's made that way. Why not some
Yeah.
more? Because I don't think they'd eat the grapes.
But what I compare it to, and sometimes it is that strong, but when it's done well, when it's balanced, it's just incredible ruby red grapefruit, just ridiculous.
It smells really good.
Radish, ruby red grapefruit, fresh cut grass. And the reason for the comparison for all of those things, it's the same chemical compounds. When you cut your
Right.
grass and that smell that you smell, that incredible green aroma.
My daughter says that's the grass screaming.
Mm-hmm. It's methoxypyrazines, and those are the same things that make Cab Franc smell like bell peppers and make Sauvignon Blanc smell like grapefruit and cut
And I
grass.
occasionally get a Merlot that tastes like celery.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I've said that, I've actually had a winemaker respond, the winemaker in question,
Yeah.
going, "There's no chance you got celery out of that." I'm like, it's funny because everybody that was there got celery, not
Yep.
just me. I was the first person to mention it.
Right.
And then we'd say to people, "Hey, have a sip of this. What vegetables do you taste?"
Right.
And every one of them was able to say, uncoached, "Is that celery?"
Part of the reason that you and I became friends is that you and I have I think you're actually better at it than I am, of nailing a flavor that then all of a sudden everybody gets. And it's not that you've suggested them into it, it's that once you say it, they're like, I was looking for that.
It's like a
It
thing
was
people
out of
miss
their
all
grasp.
the time, in my opinion, is chocolate cordial.
Mm-hmm.
But-
Oh, yeah.
but
Well,
when
especially
you
in the
say
cabs
it-
that you
when
like.
you say it, people are like, "Oh my gosh, you're right. I do
Yep.
kind of taste that candy,
Mhm.
chocolate, cherry kind of thing."
The thing is that smell and taste, smell especially, but smell and taste together are very, very nostalgic. So if you have, like when I was a kid, I loved those chocolate covered cherries you get at Christmas time. And so finding that flavor in a wine wasn't very difficult because it was reminding me of something very, very
Right.
evocative.
Oh yeah, for me, I remember not third grade, 3 years old in preschool, finger painting. The smell of finger paints brings me right back to that basement classroom.
Mm-hmm. Play-Doh.
Yeah,
The smell of Play-Doh
all
does
of
it for
that.
me.
It's amazing that stuff stays with you.
Oh yeah, no, smell is.
It's the strongest memory suggester of all of our senses.
I've been wondering if music isn't I think music might be runner up. I don't think it's quite as strong, but I think compared to any of the other actual physical senses, music is actually stronger than like sight or hearing.
And it's
well, I guess
part
it's kind
of
hearing.
I mean,
but-
Paul Stanley used to tell me it's a snapshot of part of their life.
Mhm.
There's a picture of their life, and that's the soundtrack, and nothing can change that. He was talking about, do we want to do more albums? The thing is, we can put out our best album ever, and everyone will be like, "Oh, that's great. Could you play Love Gun?"
Yep.
And so
Beth.
they have all these hits,
Yeah.
all these songs that were part of people's lives at very important times in their lives.
Well, not only that, it's
And-
also worth noting the time period. Like, Kiss right now. At that point, they are famous now for what they did then, but what they did then is what made them famous.
Well, yeah, sure, but my point is that they still have the same number of fans.
Oh, totally.
15, 20,000 people show up to every time they play.
Sure.
And those people all love their music.
Right.
And they put out something new, and they all listen to it once and go, cool. Now,
Right.
could you play Love Gone?
Oh,
could
yeah.
you play, Beth? Could you play Detroit Rock City? They don't really, I remember the last time I saw them, they didn't play anything from their two latest albums, Monster and Sonic Boom. Not one song. It was really because,
they know what their people are looking for.
Well, and the thing is, if you're going to play for 2 hours and you're Kiss and you've been around from 1973 and you put out the number of albums they've put out, you got to choose songs that were hits that you aren't going to play.
Yep.
And since, none of those songs really spoke to people, even though some of them were quite good, in the way that when they were teenagers.
Yeah.
And that's it. I mean, teens... And teens want the music to be not by 60, 70-year-olds, but by people that they could see themselves spending time with and hanging out.
Well, I mean, and the point that I was making is that, like, if there are plenty of young people younger than me, even, Gen Zs who like Kiss. But the thing is that if you like Kiss as somebody that young, chances are pretty good that, like, a parent or an older relative was playing it for you and you really liked it. And what they were playing for you was the stuff that made them famous. Yeah. So it kind of becomes a recursive loop after a while because that kind of stuff is it. And then, I think that's the duty of any fan to, if you like a band and you don't know a lot by them, to go on your own and delve into them.
Well, I've got every album the Kiss has ever
put
put
out.
Well,
well, yeah, they're your favorite band.
I mean, and I worked with them for 3 years.
Right.
So I'm noticing that it's starting to open up with some cherry cough drop.
I could see that. I was also going to say a little bit. It's
still funky on the nose. The nose isn't blowing off, but again, it's not funky on the tongue.
It is funky, but I'm starting to pick up a softer, rounder kind of aroma that I'm struggling a little bit to put my finger on, but I want to say it's something kind of like prunes, some kind of dried fruit aroma. But yeah, I'm definitely. When you say the cherry cough drop, are you picking that up on the palate or on the
palate?
On the nose?
On the palate.
Try it again.
On the nose, I'm picking up some wax that wasn't there.
Okay,
before.
I could definitely see that. Yeah, for sure.
Paraffin, something like that.
Now it's not quite Ludens.
It's not the real high quality ones.
No, unfortunately. The ones that I asked my dad for even when I wasn't sick.
When I had the other bottle of this, I've had one other bottle of this, I was in the mood for just something completely different.
Right.
Then I gave it 4 stars.
Yeah.
This one's somewhere between 3.5 and 4 stars. Second go
Maybe because
around.
you've already had it?
Well, I've already had it.
You've lost the surprise a little bit?
I'm not actually in the mood for something different, but I thought that we should, take something a little bit off of our normal menu. And,
Well, and also...
I've got a bunch of really cool, interesting wines that aren't, huge.
Right. What if our viewers don't know this by now, they'll soon learn that I am a varietal freak. Back in 2012, Jancis Robinson and Hugh Johnson, who are kind of Jancis is a protege of Hugh, but together they are considered luminaries in the wine world. They put together this really beautiful book. It was basically an encyclopedia of all the known varietals on the planet at that time.
And you memorized it.
Well, I wish. God. One of the things they didn't include the entire book, but there's this beautiful, beautiful book from the 19-teens, I think, maybe even earlier, called Amphilography. And it was these two French guys did these beautiful plate drawings they used to do around the turn of the century. It was just an entire book of plate drawings of all the different grapes and their different leaves. And even though their leaves are similar, the grape leaves are different. It's like looking at oak versus maple versus gum,
Right. And I can think of like 5 different oaks that have completely different
Exactly,
leaves.
yeah.
And I've got them all in my forest.
And the different grapes too, because like some grapes are super huge and like Petit Verdot tends to be smaller,
Right.
And Viognier has this beautiful golden color, and Pinot Grigio looks like a red grape but makes clear juice. So they included some of the plate drawings of the more famous grapes in and among the, and it's tiny, it's like size 8 font. I have to read it with a magnifying glass. But it's really cool because they will tell you everything about the grape, what it's across, and they have a fold out.
Is this still in print?
The wine Bible or the varietal Bible? Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
But it was my main Christmas present there because I've been raving about it because a sommelier in Baltimore had told me about it, and my parents in their sneaky way, I can't remember how they told me not to buy it. I think my dad said something along the lines of, "I'm not sure you should buy that right now. You're not making enough money." I was like, "Yeah, you're right. That's a good point." And then they got it for me for Christmas. It's like, oh, that was a good one.
Yeah, the advice that I always give everyone is don't give me a book for Christmas. One, I've got 10,000 of them in print.
Right.
Two, if I wanted it, I'd already own it.
Right.
I do not wait on books for some perfect time to pick it up. The day it comes out, if it's a book I want, I got it.
The exception I will make is reference books, because it's not like a novel where I have to sit down and read the whole thing and lose my place. I use reference books for very specific tasks. If I'm writing an article, for a hypothetical, if I'm writing an article about a grape and I need to find out how many acres of it are grown worldwide, and I have a book that tells me that, I'm going to be consulting the book for that.
Right. Yeah, I know. I could have gone on a really deep dive on this grape because I started reading up on the grape, and I'm like, oh, this is Will's area. I don't need to know that much about the grape. I really don't need to know where it grows best, when it was first, where they think it came from. I'm like, I'm just going to drink it.
It's just really funny when you handed me that sheet that says it's a cross between Gouais Blanc and whatever the other one is. Gouais Blanc is actually the parent variety, even though nobody's ever heard of it. I'm not sure it's even grown anymore.
I never heard of it.
It is the parent varietal of so many famous. It's either the parent or grandparent. Gouais Blanc is the common ancestor of a whole bunch of the prestige, the noble European varietals.
Okay,
Which
by noble, there's a particular group.
Right.
Your
Chardonnay, Merlot,
Pinot Noir.
Mm-hmm. And it's not necessarily that they are identifiably better. It's that over time they have become identified and associated with prestige wine regions.
Yeah.
If Burgundy had been growing a completely different grape other than Pinot, that grape would be considered a prestige varietal.
If they were doing Scuppernong.
Exactly. No. I don't know if they could. Actually,
why would they want to?
Well, actually, I just thought they probably would be able to, because it's the other way around. European varietals have a harder time in America. Mm-hmm. American varietals can grow anywhere, like you throw them down.
Right. You think you got cold nights?
Yeah.
You think it's hot here? Let me just laugh at you and get big.
Oh, look, is this asphalt? Let me push my way through it.
Yeah.
I can see a grapevine, American
grapevine.
Oh, the
grapes. The amount that I've got this year is shocking. A huge bowl, a 3-gallon bowl filled up. And if I had grabbed my 3-foot my 6-foot ladder, that I could have gotten up another 3 feet easily. I could have done 2 more of those things. Angela's making jam tomorrow, so that'll be
just
interesting.
Imagine how
we're going to need a lot of sugar though. Oh boy, I've had
definitely. Isn't there something they put in jam to help break down some of the tannin, like pectin or something like that?
Well, they do put pectin.
Yeah.
You're talking to the wrong guy.
Yeah, I don't know a lot about jam making either.
My wife's made lots of great preserves.
Yeah.
I haven't.
I know
that she boils.
I'm a former food scientist and chemist. I should know this, but I don't actually know what pectin accomplishes.
I have a degree in English lit. Words.
I was having a discussion with somebody about gas chromatographs recently, and apparently you can buy. I don't think they're not chromatographs. They're mass spectrometers, but you can buy cheap ones on Amazon. And I was dubious as to their accuracy, because if you get them for $50 on Amazon, my guess is they're probably not going to do you all that much good. And he was being a little condescending with me, and it just so happened I did not have this picture on my phone to prove him wrong or to make him feel a certain way. My dad had asked me to take a picture of my diploma so he could show it to somebody.
And you had it.
And I had a picture of my diploma in chemistry, and I had also surrounded it, just for my dad's own amusement, I kept a bunch of the handouts from my analytical chem, so I had it surrounded with like liquid chromatography, gas chromatography, mass spectrometry handouts. And so this guy's mid-sentence, I show him my phone, he's like, maybe I should stop arguing with you about this. I'm like, you don't have to, I'm just saying.
Angela's best friend is married to a physicist. He works at the Naval Observatory. Yep. He's in charge, I believe, of most of the electronic relays.
Oh wow!
And he always he's like, there's 2 things that we don't ever have to argue about.
Yeah.
Publishing.
Yep.
He's like, because I know if we disagree, I'm wrong.
Right.
And physics, because if we disagree, you're wrong.
Yep.
And it's like, He's like, we don't argue. You don't argue with me about physics. I don't tell you
how
to publish.
See, here's the thing. I don't know. There are a lot of people who know way more about chemistry than me. But at the average Appalachian bonfire, I'm probably safe. I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that I'm safe.
Now, if you come with me to some of the parties in Blacksburg, it's mostly professors.
Oh yeah.
And one of my
and I stay in my lane.
One of my wine buddies is the head of the physics department at Radford, so we were just at his house Saturday night.
Right. No, what I find interesting is when it's a little knowledge really can be a dangerous thing, because you can run into somebody who's a college graduate who took some science courses and actually is not scientifically illiterate, but has some weird or interesting ideas or the main thing is misremembering. It's not so much that they're stupid or that they're ignorant, it's that they have a mismemory of
when
something.
I think about what I remember from my bachelor's degree, other than the literature,
right.
I'm like, should they give anybody a bachelor's degree ever? Because really, I mean, remember Father Guido Sarducci had this thing, I will teach you the 6 words from a language that you will remember 20 years from now. And so we can give you your degree in 10 minutes.
Right.
Here's what you're going to remember.
Right.
You know, and that's real. My God, is that real?
I mean, it's one of those things where, I mean, here's another good example. I'm a certified sommelier. I never have to renew that. And I actually found, I was mildly offended. I'm like, how do you guys know in 20 years if I'm going to...
I remember anything.
If I remember anything. I mean, I will, but it made me a little more, I don't want to say dubious, because, I mean, the thing is that my assumption is, if you're this into wine, you're probably going to retain stuff.
Yeah.
And if you're going to stick around for 4 years and get a degree in something, you're probably going to retain stuff. Now, the level of retention, and also the type of institution that you're going to, is going to play a role in that, because I went to a liberal arts college, where if you were a science major, you had to take a certain, not just a certain number, but a certain type of humanities classes, and then a certain number of each. And if you were...
My college was very much the same.
Yeah, which is a great basis for an education, because what it allows you to do is go, okay, well, I have to take 3, literature courses, but these are all the ones I'm allowed to take, so I can pick and choose. And I found that really fun.
I used it to make sure that I had a class with some of my friends.
Yeah.
Because there would be courses that we all needed to get a degree there, and so we would take them together.
Yeah, and you pick the ones that sound the most fun. You're like, hey, what sounds the most fun to you? I was thinking biological anthropology. Cool, I was too.
And if anyone said, well, what do you think about doing this comparative lit course? I'm like, yeah, because that's English major light, and I'm about to blast that. Because most people who take comparative lit courses are not English majors.
Right.
Because they're pretty worthless to you if you're an English major.
Right.
You want me to compare 2 authors that I have written 100,000 words on? Sure. How much time have you got?
It's so funny that you mentioned that, because there was a class called Math of Powered Flight, and I kept hearing about it my freshman year, and I got really excited because I'm super into aviation, and I thought maybe it was an applied math class that had to do with like physics principles, and my friend Dave was taking it, and he was like, Will, that's the math for English majors. And I was like, oh. And he's like, they call it Math of Powered Flight to make us feel better. And I was like, darn it.
Yeah,
I was so excited.
Yep, I took 2 or 3, and they were just kind of amusing for an English major.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the stuff that I would normally, the level at which we would normally have to converse.
Right.
You hand that to the professor, and he's like, you're trying too hard. You do not need to work this hard in this class.
It just makes me think of the Billy Collins poem.
Okay.
It makes me think of the Billy Collins poem, Marginalia, where he said, you can tell sometimes the marginalia is reflecting someone who's really limping their way through an English course, because you'll just see foreshadowing by itself written in a few lines, desultorily marked, and it's like, and then you can tell someone who's really into it, where they're writing like intense, analysis of this one paragraph in Ulysses or something.
I remember taking one as a second semester senior, and the professor pulling me aside. He's like, dude, I would have given you a master's degree for that. This is supposed to be your easy course. This is the professor telling me that not too much. Don't knock yourself out. This isn't worth it. You got the A with this. He actually said, you got an A.
Right.
I'm like, well, this is only the first paper. He's like, dude, you don't ever have, you got an A. You don't even have to come back if you don't want to. I know why you're here. I'm like, I'm here to hang out with those folks, so I'm coming back.
But the thing is that while I understand what he's saying, there's a part of me that can't turn that off. Like, I can't dumb something down just because...
I could have been breezier and shorter.
Okay, that's fair.
And that's the thing I would have done.
Sometimes it's fun to really lit crit something that doesn't deserve to be lit critted.
I remember I had managed to screw something up and I didn't get my schedule in. So I was a second semester senior, and I had to go to these classes and get permission to take them because I needed them to graduate.
Right.
And the classes were all over full, and the professor's trying to decide, or they have 1 or 2 and they got 10 people who want the course.
Yeah.
Generally they give it to the second semester seniors, and I was shocked when I got this class. So there's this guy, he was on loan to us, and he wasn't British, he was American, but he was on loan to the University of Massachusetts from, I think, what's the big one in England?
Oxford?
Oxford. had been in charge of all of the Byron papers.
That's
I won't
not
go into
intimidating.
that story. Yeah, right. Not at all. And it was English Romantic Poets intro. It's a freaking sophomore course or freshman course
Oh,
that I
man,
hadn't
those-
managed to pick up.
Those
So
lucky
now I'm
sophomores,
taking
that's awesome.
Now I'm taking it as a senior. The difference between me
So Keats and Shelley.
Yeah, Keats, Shelley,
Yeah,
Byron.
Byron, yep.
Yeah, those were the big ones. And he's slamming down on his lectern. Tell me about Shelley.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, what the hell's he want to know? And he just keeps doing it. And all the freshmen and sophomores are freaking out.
Right.
I raise my little hand and I'm like, I'm not going to get this course.
Yeah.
And he points at me and I said, he didn't swim well. Shelley drowned. So,
Yep.
and he turned purple and I thought, oh God, we're done.
Yeah.
And then he laughed and he put me in the class. He's like, well, it's clear you really knew.
Right, yeah,
Because
yeah.
you answered a couple of other questions and you didn't always joke. He's
Right.
like, but I like a sense of humor. And he proved that. So we do our first paper and I write a really good paper because
Yeah.
I've taken some risks with this
Yeah.
guy and now I realize he's a big gun.
Right.
I mean, he's a real
The sense
deal.
of humor only gets you so far.
Right.
You want to show that you're.
And
yeah.
so I get this paper back, and he's like, if you got anything lower than a B, you need to drop this course right now. And I'm looking at a D on the front page, a D. And he has bled across this, bled across it. And I get to the last page, turn it over, and look at the back. And he's like, doesn't swim well, asshole A. And I'm just oh.
We
But
need,
he said, I knew you'd be able to take the joke.
we
and he
need
was right.
more teachers like
He's
that.
like, because some people would have complained to the
the
dean
dean,
about
oh,
me,
yeah.
but he's like, I knew you were going to look at it and go, all right, he got me,
Well,
which
he
is
also
exactly
he
what
also
I
knew
did.
you were going to probably read every single bit.
Oh yeah, every
thing that
little
he
bit.
said. Yep.
Every little bit. He's like, all the stuff that I bled on your paper, all that was real.
Right. The grade
Internalize it.
was.
But
also
the reality is, I would never have done that with any of these other people because they're not second semester seniors.
I had a really.
And they wouldn't even be able to understand what I was telling
Oh
them.
yeah, absolutely.
So my next one was a straight up A, and
Right.
there was like 3 little bits. He's like, "Yeah, you internalized it." I'm
Wow.
like, well,
Just one paper.
well, that's all it takes. I mean,
I guess
really,
you
at that
learned what a
point,
professor's
what I
looking for.
did is right. It wasn't so much that I had to change my writing forever.
Right, you
it
just had
was
to
like,
change your
oh, you
style
don't
slightly,
appreciate
yeah.
these kinds of things
Right.
that other professors might. And I, as a fiction, since I've always written fiction since I was like 11,
Yeah.
10. I have always known you just break any damn rule that you're good enough to break.
Yeah.
So even in college, I was breaking rules all over the
Well,
damn
and one of the
place.
nice things about writing as a discipline within an academic context is that if you know what a person is looking for, there are people that I still talk to this day who's like, oh, it's a shame you have to write to a professor. I'm like, professors are human beings. There's
Well,
a certain...
it's like writing to a market. You got to write to an editor if you want to
Exactly.
make any money
And
off of
the
it. So it's
professor's
not
not
a
telling you
horrible
you have to
skill.
write this way for the rest of your life. You just have to write this way for a semester.
So if you're writing like you know that an editor likes a certain
Yeah.
thing, then you go one way, and you know another editor, you go another way.
Also, if you can't change gears, don't write.
I had a friend who he sold me his first short story. We had actually known each other from our rock and roll days.
Yeah.
Rajanar, okay, buddy. And I bought his first couple of stories, and Absolute Magnitude was, a professional magazine. It got him a couple of credits towards his SIFWA membership.
Okay.
And he was like, oh, I really want to be an analog. And I'm like, well, you're good enough. He's like,
Yeah.
well, they reject all my stories. I'm like, you sending them the kind of stories I'm buying from you? And he said, yeah. I'm like, well, they're never going to buy those.
Right.
I was like, have you read the magazine? He's like,
Yeah.
no, I figure that I'm a good enough writer. I'm like, you are a good enough writer, but they are not odd, but
Eccentric?
eccentric. They have
Niche. They're a niche market.
They're such a niche market that if you're not writing to it, you're not selling to it.
Yeah.
And he was like, and he bought 3 copies. He read it. He emailed me and said, I see exactly what you mean.
Yep.
And then he never failed, and they were the biggest magazine.
And they
in
picked
the
him up
market.
after that?
Dude, he never sold another story to me because he sold everything.
Oh,
to them.
wow.
Yeah, I mean, he's been in them regularly for the last 15 or 20 years, and it really comes down
I
to
find it really surprising that people don't. I mean, the thing is that yes, every author has a voice, and like if you're good, you're going to be able to tell. Oh, the same person that wrote this wrote that. I mean, unless you were to actually like completely change your mentality, your voice is going to.
I have several styles that I use. I use one style writing a blog.
Right.
When I was working with Kiss, I did the really breezy, easy, like, hey,
Yeah.
I'm just talking with a buddy. I remember a couple
Yeah.
of the writers were like, how the hell do you do that? I'm
Yeah.
like, I just do it like I'm talking to a buddy.
I can write professional. Well,
and then I can do the stuff shirt
yeah.
thing if I have to.
Well, in the scientific fields, you have to learn how to write in precise scientific prose. But then you also have to learn how to write in stuff that you need to be read by a layman, but a layman who isn't dumb.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're a layman who isn't dumb. You might not be a science major, but I can't dumb it down for
the science fiction.
Yeah, so like I have to be able to write to you, and I have to be able to write to a physics professor, and I have to be able to write.
Getting back to this wine, since our time is up,
it's still funky. It is still funky.
It still smells funky, but I'm appreciating the tongue.
Oh yeah,
a lot more than I did earlier.
Mm-hmm.
This is definitely wine.
It's softened.
You know, normally I don't decant anything this light, but I would recommend that you might want to decant it for a half hour.
Yeah, and the thing is that that's one of the reasons I'm so glad that we're doing this. Had we decanted this, we might not necessarily have known to tell you, oh, by the way, you should decant this. We would have just been going, oh, we decanted this for our own purposes. And there are people who I think rightly view decanting with a little bit of suspicion because they're like, well, if it's not good right out of the bottle, what's wrong with it? Or like, do I need a decanter? It's like, no, you don't.
The tannins could be too strong.
Sure.
And you need that to open up.
Or it could
but
be
in this
super
case,
funky.
you know, this is super funky. As far as the nose.
Yeah.
I mean, it was only a little funky on the palate to start with.
Oh, yeah.
And there's no funk now. It's kind of a juicy, cough droppy.
It's got a much rounder, fuller feel. I'm picking up a lot more fruit nuances. Now, this is not a super fruity wine, and it's never gonna be. But there is more fruit character, especially around the edges.
And now there's a little bit of tannins that were being overpowered by everything else that are starting to express themselves.
A little more chocolatey?
At the back end.
Maybe? Not in flavor, just in terms of the softness of the tannin.
Yeah.
By the way, that's something I never mean to confuse anybody on. If I say chocolatey tannins, I don't mean that the wine tastes like chocolate. But when you eat a piece of chocolate and it's melting in your mouth and it's filling the middle of your mouth and it's starting to spread to your cheeks, that feeling that you get, that richness, is what I refer to. Then there's a tannin that feels like chalk. Like you have actual chalk
there's
in your
lots
mouth.
of chalky tannins.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so this is where I think we're going to call it a night.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, this was a decent wine.
Very good wine.
It's quite different than the ones that I normally drink, but I'm feeling like doing, you know, every other. Doing something strange and weird.
And this is a good one to do.
Different. This is very different than what you're normally going to drink. I believe you can get your hands on it. I bought
absolutely.
This not that long ago.
Well, not only that, Anton Bauer is somebody you can get your hands on. Blaufrankish is something you can get your hands on. It's an odd grape, but it's not, especially if you're in or near a bigger city, it's not hard to get your hands on a Blaufrankish. Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you go into your wine store and you're like, hey, I'm looking for an Austrian Blaufrankish, chances are they have at least one and they might have several.
If it's a large, they wouldn't have that in Floyd.
No, not in Floyd. But I'm thinking that if people want to wander a little bit further afield, if somebody lives near a Charlottesville or a Richmond or somewhere,
Boston,
Manhattan, if you're no further than 20 or 30 minutes from a decently major population center with a good wine store, and this review sounded interesting, and this is a wine that you wanted to try.
It is definitely an interesting wine.
Yeah, give it a shot.
If all you ever drink are Napa Cabs, don't.
No.
If you kind of sometimes like Pinot and you like some of the other lighter grapes,
or you just found yourself going, I
want something different. That's how I got it. I just wasn't in the mood, which is really rare for me. Like once every 5 years, I wanted something light, and this is what I was handed when I talked to Randall at Vintage
Good recommendation.
Yeah,
yep.
No,
good producer.
Never misses.
No, he is not with you.
So thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you again next week.
Sláinte. Cheers.
Salute.